Thank you, Elder Durrant. Thank you also, Elder Seaman, for the intro. And the funny thing about coming second, you've already had your greetings done for you. You guys can take your seats, too. But I do also want to thank you, Pastor Seaman, for your leadership and actually allowing me to stand there before your congregation today. I appreciate it. It's actually a funny thing. Before I got started, I was thinking this morning, I remember way back, I think when my dad first became chairman of the board at one of the AGMs, I was teasing him about not having an iPad, and he was saying, yeah, I'm going to get one, so I don't have to have all these pages. And I was teasing about not being up in the millennial era. Then I woke up this morning and realized I don't even have one myself. And even worse, I can't even find a binder to put my papers in. So, but thank God BAC has got some stuff for me. But my topic is strength tested. It's coming from Judges 15:11-20. I begin. The word test is defined as a procedure intended to establish the quality, performance, or reliability of something before it is taken into widespread use or practice. Now, if you think about it, you don't advance further and further in your education without passing tests to show your aptitude in your classes. Apple doesn't release its newest products without going through a series of tests on them first. Kathy, I don't know about Samsungs, it's not my thing, but I continue. Vehicles are not allowed to be on the road without going through an inspection or test at TCD before being passed for another year. So yes, tests are all around us throughout this life. So why is it as believers, when we encounter tests of our spiritual strength, do we sometimes choose to blame God when all this sort of test is merely the opening paragraph to your own testimony? It's a test to show God off, if you will. Instead of blaming God, we as Christians can say, but God. Matthew 5, verse 45 says, the sun rises and falls on the evil and the good, and it rains on the just as well as the unjust. When I was younger, I used to be really into the World's Strongest Man competitions on TV. And one of those things that actually piqued my interest was the various tests that the competitors had to go through to earn that title. Some competitions favored shorter competitors, some taller, some with more endurance, and some with more agility, until at the end, points were tallied and you had your eventual winner. Always being a short guy in the room, naturally, I supported the shorter competitors, thinking that could be me one day, and then after a long day of work, I'll come in and pose in the mirror. But I digress. Exodus 15, verse 2 says, the Lord is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. He is my God, I will prepare him an habitation. My father's God, and I will exalt him. Isaiah 41:10 says, fear thou not, for I am with thee. Be not dismayed, for I am thy God. I will strengthen thee, yea, I will help thee. Yea, I will uphold thee with the right hand of my righteousness. And finally, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. once said, the ultimate measure of the strength of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. Church, regardless of your size, speed, agility, age, or yes, hard to believe, even your position in church, your strength must be tested if you're going to be taken on to the next level of your destiny triumphantly. God will never place more on you than you can bear. In other words, God is your strength, and with his strength, you will pass the next test and even the next one after that. So join me as we go through Samson's test as we look at the following 3 points. Point 1, strength surrendered. Point 2, strength shown. And point 3, strength supplied. I began point 1, strength surrendered. In the test, we see Samson having a moment of reflection after the destruction he caused upon the Philistines. In his mind, he thought he had done something good by destroying these Philistines. But I'm sure, much to his surprise, the tribe of Judah, his own family and friends, are there with him on the rock of Etam, but not to thank him or lift him up, but actually to give him over to the Philistines. Church, isn't it crazy how your own kind or those closest to you can challenge you the most? I ask you 100% of the time, do we actually turn the other cheek? Sure. It takes every bit of self-control to literally not go upside their heads. Yeah, so his family tests can be, or family fights can be the worst. In this text, you would imagine that the tribe of Judah would be there celebrating the man who is trying to save them, and that the Philistines would be the ones going to get Samson. However, that is not the case. The tribe of Judah had been held captive for so long that they would seemingly prefer to please their own oppressors rather than support their own deliverer. Unfortunately, in today's society, we see this sort of behavior more and more. People tend to get angry at someone who actually stands up to the evil happening around them, rather than support them in the fight against that very same evil. We definitely have that in this church from Pastor Seaman. In verse 12, the tribe of Judah tells Samson that they have come down to bind him and hand him over, basically on a silver platter, to the Philistines. They're very oppressors, and I'm sure Samson was sitting there saying, you guys can't be serious right now. Like, I'm on your team, and I'm trying to help you guys. Which is why he wanted to make sure that they would not kill him themselves. And let me tell you, it definitely hurts more when your own hurt you than if it was to be betrayed by your own enemies. With his own strength, Samson surely could have fought off the tribe of Judah before they bound him up. I mean, the guy fought lions and bigger animals and was the reigning world's strongest man. So some rope wouldn't have been a problem to get out of. But sometimes, church, it shows more strength and character to surrender your problems completely over to God and appear weak in the eyes of man, because there's a bigger prize in the end. With this act, Samson showed he could yield as well as conquer. And like Deaconess in Training Vaughn said on Wednesday, you have to have balance in this Christian walk. But I know, and ask yourselves, could you? I know myself, Ryan Durrant, years ago, not Director Ryan, Deacon in Training or anything like that, not keyboardist, I would have loved to take on the verbal or the physical fight. And my parents could tell you some horror stories, I'm sure. But thank God that 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9 says, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in your weakness. Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. By surrendering, thus appearing to be weak, yes, Samson was putting himself into a troubling situation where no one else but God could deliver him. But by doing that, Samson was actually showing strength. This is where point 2, strength was shown. The Philistines finally had the man, and I'm sure they were hurling insults, displaying arrogance and pride at what they had achieved and what they were about to do to Samson as he was carried towards them. He was bound with new cords, not the embrittled cords that could welter away easily. Like, he wasn't meant to go anywhere with these new cords around his hands. But verse 14 says, and when he came unto Lehi, the Philistines shouted against him. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon him, and the cords that were upon his arms became as flax that were burnt with fire, and his bands loosed off his hands. See, in an instant, God can change your situation just like he changed Samson's. If, of course, though, you let him. Like I said in my previous sermon a couple months ago, we actually try to play God, and that just delays our breakthrough. Sometimes it takes being uncomfortable or being silent or surrendering your own strength to allow God to be God. 2 Corinthians 3, verse 17 says, now the Lord is that Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is liberty. Samson was now free from those cords that bound his hands. I can only imagine the looks on those Philistines' faces when Samson actually broke free. And even worse, the look on their face when Samson actually went about getting a weapon. And it's probably the same look that these little kids say when Pastor pulls out that sword, or definitely my mama's face. But I found it interesting that the weapon of choice was actually the jawbone of an ass. Samson had killed lions and other much bigger and more intimidating animals before, but God provided him an ordinary weapon, so it seemed. But isn't that just like God, though? To take something or someone seemingly of very ordinary stature and turn it into a destructive weapon? In these moments, God provides extraordinary strength to an ordinary situation. I'm sure we can all remember a time where we felt ill-equipped or unqualified to go through a situation. Or maybe that's just me. But even now, I remember a song that my mom sang actually for my dad's last sermon. It says, God uses ordinary people. I won't ask her to sing it. I could ask my daddy to sing it, but I'm not trying to start no concerts or nothing like that. Debut concerts and all. Yeah. But just meditate on that when you're going through your own tests of your own strength. The lyrics are, just ordinary people. God uses ordinary people, just like me and you, who are willing to do as he commands. God uses people that will give him all, no matter how small your all may seem to you, because little becomes much as you place it in the master's hands. Our seaman even said last week, as strong and as skilled as a laborer that he is, as a man, he will get tired. But in God's hands, he is able to do way much more than what he could have thought himself. Truly, when God is in it, the results will far surpass whatever we could have imagined for ourselves. But back to our account of Samson, the unfortunate thing is that Samson failed to acknowledge God's favor in his slaughter of the 1,000 Philistines. Verse 16 says, and Samson said, with the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps with the jaw of an ass, have I slain 1,000 men. A lot of eyes in there. I've done this, I've done that. But today we have that same problem where we are too prideful at seemingly our own success, quick to forget that it was only God that got us through that test. In spite of our own intelligence, strength, speed, or whatever, we must always remember that it is never through us alone, but through God. We get to point 3, strength is supplied. After a great victory, we have to remember our own mortality. Emotionally, we are at our most vulnerable, and we usually feel drained. So as powerful as those world's strongest men competitors are, even they have to pause for a minute and take in what they have just been able to accomplish. Now I have to apologize before I go on, and thankfully Dr. Woods is in here, and Pastor would be laughing at me, but I was never the science guy in school. I was the math guy, and science, I would just find a way to be amongst the missing. And as soon as I got a chance to drop it, I never looked back. But I also admit, though, I should know these facts. A little visit to WebMD, I figured it couldn't hurt. So I said, let me look up the benefits of water just to confirm my thoughts. I found that, number 1, water helps to maximize your physical performance. If we do not stay hydrated, our physical performance can and will suffer. This is particularly important during high-intense exercise or high heat. Dehydration can have a noticeable effect if you lose as little as 2% of your body's water content. However, it is not uncommon for athletes to lose between 6 to 10% of their water weight by way of sweat. This can lead to altered body temperature control, reduced motivation, increased fatigue, and can make exercise feel much more difficult, both physically and mentally. Second thing I found out was that hydration has major effects on energy levels and brain functions. Studies show that even mild dehydration can impair many aspects of brain function. A study of several men showed that fluid loss of 1.59% was detrimental to working memory and increased feelings of anxiety or fatigue. I don't know what that is for females, but I'm not here for that. That's the next time. All common sense stuff, though, right? Hopefully I have my science degree by now. Verses 18 and 19 says, and he was sore athirst, and called on the Lord and said, thou hast given this great deliverance into the hand of thy servant. And now shall I die of thirst, and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised? But God clave an hollow place that was in the jaw, and there came water thereout. And when he had drunk, his spirit came again, and he revived. Wherefore he called the name thereof En-Hakkore, which is in Lehi to this day. And it is important to know here that the word En-Hakkore means the supplication well. After this great victory, Samson was naturally tired and desperate for something to drink. And who better to quench his thirst than that the living water himself? Shockingly providing water to him, and from the very jawbone that he had slayed the Philistines with. See, God used Samson's weapon, and it became his watering well. Samson could have easily said, as most Bermudians will probably say, yeah, after that, man, I want to go celebrate. Give me a 6-pack of Heinekens, give me some Swizzle, give me a Henny and Coke, to name a few. You all might know more than me. But God provided Samson the very best out of the weapon that he provided for him. As I wind on, God could have had Samson die right there, And the last memory we would have of him would be his defeat over the 1,000 Philistines. But God had even bigger plans for Samson. He went on to rule over Israel for another 20 years after that. I know that in this test of life, it's hard to see a way out sometimes. Trust me, it is easier said than done to just pass all your problems off to God when we're smart, when we're fast, and all that type of stuff. But the singer-songwriter and pretty much everything, Jacqueline Carr, said, if it had not been for the pressing, I wouldn't be able to walk into my destiny because it's preparing me for greater. Look, I know life can make you feel bad about yourself. Some of the things we go through can make you feel bad about yourself. But trust me, and this is actually directed to men, there is a ruler in you. There is a king in you. The enemy can try to trick you into thinking that you are beneath and that you will always be a borrower and never a lender. But I can't stress it enough that with God, there is always more to you than what you can think of yourself. In spite of Samson's shortcomings, in spite of our shortcomings, thankfully, God doesn't look through the same lens that we do when we see ourselves and each other. He always has greater in store. Church, we all might not be the strongest, tallest, or even the fastest, but somewhere along the journey of life, our strength is going to be tested. But thank God we don't serve a sometimes God. Our God, like the song says, is greater. He is stronger. He is higher than any other. If our God is with us, then who could ever stop us? If our God is with us, then who could stand against? Shekinah, our strength comes from God. Thank you.